Yo, what's up? It's Friday. You know what I'm saying? Give yourself a pat on the back if you made it to today. If you're going through anything, just know it get greater later. I definitely made it to this Friday. I worked out this morning. I ate, did everything I was supposed to. I told y'all as promised, 10 videos today or more, 10 videos Saturday, and 10 videos Sunday. We're on this grind. In December, I'm gonna try to push it to like 15 videos every day for that whole entire month. But this video is six more of the most evil musicians. We're gonna get straight into it to know what this video is mostly about.
I uploaded 7 of the most evil musicians. As the title suggests, I discussed some deplorable, disgusting, and horrifying acts committed by famous and not-so-famous musicians that range from someone paying to have their wife killed to a cult leader who ordered his followers to murder innocent people. Naturally, there was no way I could stop at just one video, as there are obviously far more artists out there that belong on a list like this. Unlike the last video, you'll see that there's a common theme throughout for exactly why they are on this list. Anyway, you've all waited long enough for a new video from me, so I'm just going to get right into it. Here are 6 more of the most evil musicians. Also no, Gigi Allen isn't on this list. Deal with it. This video is going to start with several musicians you have most likely never heard of, but I assure you, they are musicians, and they are most definitely evil. Cassius Povey is a 29-year-old guitarist and singer from Lincolnshire, England, who played in local bands in the area. While he never achieved any commercial success due to never being signed to a record label, and as such released all his music through streaming services, he was fairly popular in the local area, and as the lead guitarist of all the bands he played in, Cassius naturally found himself attracting a significant female fan base. He obviously enjoyed the attention he received from these young girls, and would often talk to them online through Facebook, with the girls obviously being thrilled at having received attention from their favourite guitarist. Cassius, of course, enjoyed this attention as well, as he was only in his late teens to early 20s at the time. As you can probably guess though, he realised he could use these young girls' admiration for him to his advantage. He would begin talking to these girls more and more, eventually becoming friends with them and gaining their trust. This obviously led to him grooming them, completely taking advantage of the young and impressionable girls, the youngest of whom was apparently only 13 years old. He would ask to meet them in person, to which the girls gladly accepted, no doubt thrilled that they were going to meet their favourite guitarist, who by that point had become their friend. Unfortunately, his intentions were far from pure. He would meet these teenage girls and commit terrible acts on them, the kind that would scar them for the rest of their lives. And he did this with many girls for 6 years. One of his victims even became pregnant and had an abortion without telling her parents. She was only 14 years old. It wasn't until 2020 when Meg Foley, one of his victims, finally spoke.
Hold up, I'm confused. If she got an abortion, who took her? Cause don't you gotta be a certain age to go to the clinic and all that, or have parent supervision when you a certain age or something like that? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Spoke out against him in a Facebook post.
Meg was still at school when Povey persuaded her to perform sexual acts online after grooming her for months on end.
He was very charismatic. He literally just added me on Facebook one day. He just added me on Facebook and he started a conversation and he made out that he thought I was like 19 or 20. I blatantly wasn't. I was 12. I was being bullied in school and he would make you feel you were special. He made me feel like I had friends. He introduced me to all these different people that were way older than me. Like, I felt cool, you know? He knew what he was doing. He knew exactly how to manipulate people. He knew how to make people like him. The thing that bothers me the most about this is not so much what he did, but how accepting his friends were, of his actions. None of them said a word. People knew who he was and people knew what he did. Nobody said anything. This wasn't something that was a secret.
I mean, if nobody said anything, they were most likely into the same thing as him.
Why did you decide to out him?
Because he deserved it. Somebody needed to say something because, God forbid, if he'd have carried on doing this for 10 more years, there would have been so many more people.
Cassius was arrested following the post, and in court, It was revealed that, upon meeting his victims, he would give them alcoholic drinks that he had spiked before assaulting them, with almost all of his victims having been under the age of 16. In total, Cassius was charged with 19 assaults. The courts heard how he mainly targeted vulnerable females with mental health problems and difficult relationships at home.
He made himself...
Yeah, definitely a special place in hell for him. Yeah, definitely.
like an idol at Clock Tower. It's him, it's Cassius Povey. Like, oh my God, Cassius is here. Everyone stop what you're doing. Found out everything about me first. And then when I was at my most vulnerable and I needed him, he then used that against me.
Kate felt vulnerable because she'd split up with her boyfriend. Povey spiked her drink, she says, then yelled her at his flat.
Now it's kind of messed me up for life because now I'm sitting here with severe depression, PTSD. I haven't been able to get a job or have a stable relationship. Like, I'm a walking, talking nightmare, really.
Cassius showed no remorse for what he had done, with the judge stating, quote, "All of the victims in this case have found you to be manipulative and cunning, and I have found that this is the type of person that you are." He was found guilty of 7 assaults, 1 against a woman aged over 16 and 6 against girls between 13 and 15, and he was sentenced to 17 years in prison and registered as a sex offender for life. With his imprisonment, any chance he had of ever having a career in the music business has been completely destroyed, but that's certainly for the best. If he had ever become a famous musician, there's no telling how far his reach would have extended and how many women he would have harmed. Andy Inoki is a former grime and hip-hop artist from London, England. Growing up in Tottenham, he fell in with the gang life from a young age and had been in trouble with the law numerous times in his teenage years, having been arrested for beating an ex-girlfriend and also threatening someone with an airgun, though he was also on the receiving end of violent crime himself, being the victim of a stabbing. It was in his teen years that he discovered his passion for music and began producing his own grime and hip-hop music, which would see airplay on various pirate radio stations in London. This led to him catching the eye of the grime group Boy Better Know, and he was brought into the group as a new member in the mid-2000s. Joining Boy Better Know exposed him to a wider audience and led to him performing to crowds of thousands rather than the small clubs where he would perform for probably less than 100 people prior to this. He would continue performing with Boy Better Know until he released his first solo single in 2014 entitled Feed 'Em to the Lions, which would become a big hit for him and to this day is generally considered to be his signature song. The success of Feed 'Em to the Lions led to him being signed to the legendary Island Records, a label which has counted many notable artists among its lineup, such as Ariana Grande, The Weeknd, Shawn Mendes, KSI, and of course, the Insane Clown Posse. Hey, Violent J was nice enough to give my Evil Wrestlers video a shout out, so these guys are awesome in my book. Being signed to such a major label allowed Inoki, now going by the stage name Solo 45, to move.
To be honest, I never even heard of Island Records, and I definitely didn't know The Weeknd was onto it.
Move out to the rough neighbourhoods of Tottenham and settle in a fancy riverside apartment in Bristol. All in all, things were definitely on the up for him. His career was about to take off, and he'd finally managed to leave his old life behind and move to a much better area, so it looked like he was heading to stardom. Unfortunately for him, this would not be the case, as he would eventually find himself in trouble with the law for a truly vile offence. In April 2017, a woman reported him to the police for a vicious assault in which he had brutally tortured her, with him even going as far as attempting to suffocate her through waterboarding. Solo 45 was immediately arrested, with the police searching his apartment for any more evidence of foul play. When they searched his phone, they discovered that he had thousands of videos of women being tortured. Solo's court date would not take place until 2020, but it was during his trial that he proudly proclaimed just how cruel and depraved he is. He would talk about how he enjoyed abusing women, but claimed that it was all consensual, and that he wasn't actually raping them. His victims, however, said that he would use their admiration for him to groom them and gain their trust, before turning on them and beginning his horrific abuse. They also said that they were imprisoned by him and threatened with a handgun if they tried to escape or resist him. He also stabbed one of the women in the thigh. According to one of the women, he only found enjoyment when they resisted him. When they stopped fighting back, he he would grow bored and find new targets. Solo freely admitted that he was a sadistic necrophile and that he got pleasure from seeing other people cry. However, Solo still insisted that these acts were all consensual. The prosecution managed to get him to slip up though, as when they asked if he stopped when the women asked him to, he replied with, "Usually," before obviously realizing what he had just said and changed his answer to, "Always." Unfortunately for him, and fortunately for everyone else, the court knew that they had caught him in a lie, and were able to prove that his actions were in fact not consensual. He was convicted of over 30 counts of assault and sentenced to 24 years in prison, but in 2021, his sentence was actually increased to 30 years after his initial sentence was deemed to be too lenient. After more details came out about just how extreme his abuse of these women had been, many people called for him to be given a life sentence, but this was rejected, and he will be eligible for parole after serving 20 years. He may not have gotten the punishment he truly deserved, but he will at the very least spend all of his best years behind bars, and by the time he's released, few will remember the name Solo 45, though his victims will never forget the pain and suffering they endured at his hands.
All I wanna do is chop, 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 chop up a body. Chop, 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 chop it up bodies. It's one of my favorite hobbies.
Shane Coates is a horrorcore rapper, best known for being one half of the group Deviant Horror, alongside his wife, Ty Coates. As you may have guessed by their face paint, Shane and Ty are juggalos, having based their look on the Insane Clown Posse, and obviously following their footsteps by becoming a horrorcore duo. In 2016, the two opened their own independent record label, Deviant Horror Entertainment, through which they released all of their material, including their debut album, Blood, Sweat and Tears, in 2018. The album obviously didn't chart as it was a quote underground release, as most Juggalo records are. The album did, however, get them noticed among the Juggalo community and saw them getting some gigs afterwards, including a spot performing at the annual Gathering of the Juggalos in 2019. Their song, Chopping Up Bodies, was also featured in the indie horror film Clown Motel, and the two of them were actually set to appear in the sequel. While it was obvious commercial success was always going to elude them, at the very least it seemed that they would be able to maintain a following among the Juggalo crowd and probably get some more high-profile gigs and even another spot at the Gathering of the Juggalos. That was until 2022, when Shane would find himself in some serious trouble with the law. On May 17th, Shane was arrested for the battery of a 13-year-old girl. This alone is horrific enough, but it becomes even more appalling when you learn that the victim was apparently his own daughter. Earlier that month, a Facebook page had been created called The Victims of Shane Coates, in which many anonymous women came forward detailing their experiences with Shane. One told of how when she was 13, she was befriended by then 20-year-old Shane, who quickly began to show his true colors when he told her that she was on his quote fuck list, and asked her for explicit photos. Thankfully, she never sent him any photos or went to meet him in person, as she had a very strict mother who banned her from using Facebook after she found out that her daughter had been talking to a much older man. Another woman said that she had met him at a wrestling show when she was 14 and he was 21, where he immediately began acting inappropriate towards her and even made out with her after the concert. He tried to get her to come into his car, but it would seem she turned him down, but did give him her phone number. Shane would proceed to send her explicit texts for the next 2 years before he finally coerced her into sleeping with him, after which he told her that what they did must remain a secret. Presumably following this, the two fell out of contact with each other. Another story involves a girl who met Shane through a mutual friend when she was 16 and went to a party with him, only for Shane and a friend of his to repeatedly give her alcohol to get her drunk. Shane then took her to his car, and you can probably guess what he did next. He would then keep the girl at his house for several days before her mother called the police, and they arrived to take her home. After this, the girl never spoke to Shane again. These are just several of the stories posted to the Victims of Shane Coates Facebook page. The page was actually what led to the police investigating Shane and ultimately arresting him. Shane's own mother has said that she believes all of the stories circulating about him. Shane is currently facing up to life in prison for the assault on the 13-year-old.
The good thing about that is, like, I know that's his mother, but good thing she ain't try to take up for him and try to cover for him or anything like that. Like, wrong is wrong at the end of the day.
Girl. People have also called for the arrest of his wife, Ty, as she is believed to have been his accomplice, but she seems to have gone into hiding. Shane Coates has shown what an absolute monster he is and is now hated by the Juggalo community, and rightly so. If he does end up going to jail for life, it's most certainly deserved. One thing.
Hold up. What the hell is the Juggalo community? Somebody please inform me on that. I gotta look that up later. What is the Juggalo community?
Worth mentioning about Shane is some details I found out about him when he was younger. He used to be a scene kid in the late 2000s and early 2010s. Well, I say kid, he was actually in his early 20s by then. He would post these ridiculous videos of him basically acting like he had problems.
Oh my god! Ah! That picture's gay! That picture right there is gay! And you're stupid! That picture fucking sucks! God damn! Who the fuck would post that on their MySpace? What the hell's wrong with you? What
I
is
said
wrong with you?
MySpace.
What the hell is wrong with you? Why would you post a dumbass picture like that one? God damn!
Hi there, guys! It's storming outside, and I'd just like to tell you that I like potatoes. Look at that weather. Look at that weather. Isn't that an awesome way to spend Christmas? In shitty
he
weather?
cringes
Yay! I love shitty weather because it makes me feel like a tard.
At first, I didn't think it was the same guy because of how different he looked. But when you look closely at his face, particularly his eyes, you think, yeah, that's him. He was also a crunkcore artist performing under.
But I mean, I know he was playing, but he actually looks a little bit like off. Like he looks a little bit off. Like I think he played into actually being a little bit off. Like I don't think he playing no more.
The name Less Than 3, and his music was absolutely awful. Why am I telling you all of this? Well, it turns out Shane's days as a crunkcore artist ties into the very next person on this list, as not only was he friends with this person, but he had also apparently been roommates with them. And while you may not have heard of Shane, I guarantee you have heard of his friend. Yes, Shane Coates' friend and roommate is none other than the infamous Davi Vanity.
Get it. Oh, why am I getting attacked with bananas? No! No! Ah! Ah! Oh, I'm under attack! Help! Help! Oh, no! 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 Oh my god! Oh! I just got attacked by Davi and Jay.
Jesus David Torres is of course best known for being the frontman of the electronic dance electropop crunkcore group Blood on the Dance Floor. He originally got his start on MySpace, where he was actually a hairstylist, though it was actually revealed years later that he didn't know a thing about styling hair, was not a licensed hairdresser, and wore a wig, which is pretty obvious when you look at his high school photo and see that he was already starting to recede by then, so it stands to reason that he wouldn't have enough hair left by the mid-2000s to be able to style it like that. All of that said though, Davi still managed to become quite popular on MySpace, and he used this popularity to launch his band Blood on the Dance Floor in 2006, alongside his friends Chris.
I remember when people was getting killed and catfished off MySpace. I think that's when it became like a little bit dangerous. And then I forgot what happened after that. I think the website got shut down or whatever. I was close to making one, but I was young as hell at that time, especially when that started happening. I was just like, forget about it. But then later on Facebook and all that came out.
For Mongilo and Rebecca Fugati, both of whom left during the recording of their second album. They were replaced by Garrett Marshall McLaughlin, who met Davi through his sister who was dating Davi at the time, and he would go by the stage name Garrett Ecstasy.
Davi was together for about, half year working on that, and then I frequently joined. My sister actually started dating Davi, and I met Davi in Orlando at a Jeffree Star concert. And let's see, Well, after that, pretty much just happened. I started helping out with the Diamond album, and then after that, we collabed completely. And now we're having, we've had our singles, Miss Bipolar, Scream for My Ice Cream. We had that EP, and then the Ice Cream EP, and then we're working on our new album, OMFG, which is our tour that we're actually coming up with very soon.
It's our first headlining tour, so haters, thank you. You make us lots of money.
Thank you very much,
Thank you so much. Hate me. I'm fucking your dad right now. I'm fucking your dad right now. Anywho.
The duo would prove to be quite successful, with them releasing one album and 3 EPs before embarking on a tour to promote a third album. Although I don't know why people would want to see them live, since from what I've been able to find, their performances basically consisted of Davi very poorly attempting to rap and sing, while Garrett just screamed over him. Something happened.
What's crazy to me is people actually like this type of shit, and they really don't be saying like nothing, like absolutely nothing. They don't be saying nothing. It's weird to me, but I mean, to each his own.
During this tour, however, that would actually be the beginning of what Davi is best known for now. During a show in Colorado on September 12, 2009, as in right in the middle of the band's performance, the police arrived and dragged Davi off the stage, arresting him. It was later revealed that Davi had been arrested following a report to the police from 17-year-old Taurine Nicole that he had raped her in the parking lot outside the concert venue. This had happened immediately after Davi had attempted the same act on 16-year-old Ariel Klein in his car.
Did you have any idea that this was coming, or?
No, I mean, and honestly, it happened over the course of about 45 seconds where we were walking along the strip and suddenly this had happened. I mean, I couldn't even process what was happening as fast as it was happening.
You must have just been in shock.
I was definitely in shock. Looking back on it directly afterwards, I did definitely have some signs that I was probably about to pass out, which, I mean, obviously things wouldn't have gotten better.
What he say in the Boondocks, they call you Chris Hansen. I'm gonna call you Chris Handsome. Yo.
From there, so I'm glad I didn't.
When you say you're about to pass out, was that just because you're in shock from what had happened, what he had done to you?
Yeah, I mean, directly afterwards, I mean, my brain was trying its hardest to process that, but that's not something that it processes well.
What did Davi Vanity say to you after the act?
What he said to me is something I will never forget. I think it scarred me beyond what I could convey here. He said, "That was so good, baby girl. You made me feel so good."
That was so good, baby girl.
Yeah, and I think the part that bothered me the most was that he said, "You made me feel so good."
And you didn't do anything except be there when he forced himself upon you. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There was no participation on my part.
Davi was briefly jailed following this, but was bailed out by his father. He was unable to complete the rest of the tour, however, leaving Garrett Ecstasy to finish it on his own. This was not the first time Davi had been accused of sexual assault. In June 2007, 14-year-old Diana Farrell called into a Christian radio show to ask the host, Dawson McAllister, for advice. When McAllister asked what was wrong, she told him about the man who had assaulted her at her home 8 days earlier. After Farrell revealed what had happened, one of the staff members of the radio station called the police. Farrell would explain to the police that she had met Davi through MySpace and that he had come to her house to style her hair for her. After finishing working on her hair, Davi immediately forced himself on her. Farrell's parents didn't press charges under the condition that he cut off contact with their daughter.
Yeah, like I said, back then, a lot of people used to meet up through MySpace, and a lot of people was getting catfish, and a lot of people was getting killed back then.
This incident, along with the two in September 12, 2009, would be far from the last that Davi would be accused of. Following the 2009 tour, Garrett Ecstasy was either fired from the band or left due to not wanting to work with someone like Davi. Either way, he was replaced that same year by 18-year-old Jeremy Bryan Griffiths, who would go by the stage name Javon Monroe, thus creating the band's most recognizable lineup. I've noticed that Davi always seemed to have a tall, good-looking sideman who contrasted himself, a rather short, overweight, and not particularly good-looking weirdo. Perhaps he did this to make the group more appealing to their female fanbase. From 2010 onwards, the group would see its biggest success, and with this success came a slew of ranting channels on YouTube who would make videos criticizing the band's quite frankly awful music, much to the anger of Blood on the Dance Floor's notoriously toxic fanbase, who would often respond to these videos by leaving hateful comments that usually included death threats. Of course, these comments were usually compiled into videos of people laughing at how ridiculous and over the top these teenagers were being. On July 10th, 2010, we would see just how harsh and cruel the Blood on the Dance Floor fanbase could be when it came to defending Davi Vanity, when a post was made on the website Sticky Drama, in which the then 11-year-old Jessica Leonhardt was named as an underage girl that Davi had recently engaged in sexual acts with. Rather than condemn Davi, however, the forum instead focused all of its outrage on Jessica. Jessica responded to the post, saying that she and Davi were only friends. Davi was 26 at this time, by the way, just so we're clear on the age gap between the two. After making a video addressing the hate she was getting from the Blood on the Dance Floor fans, she later received harassment from 4chan, which got so bad that she uploaded the infamous video of her and her father addressing the trolls.
I'm gonna tell you right now, this is from her father. You bunch of lying, no good punks. And I know who it's coming from because I back-traced it. And I know who's emailing and who's doing it. And you've been reported to the cyber police and the state police. So you better write one more thing or screw with my computer again, you'll be arrested. End of conversation from her father.
What they was hacking into their computer or something? He told us calling the cyber police.
Father!
You're right, it's fucking gonna come and beat her ass.
And if you come near my daughter, guess what? Consequences will never be the same. You lying bunch of pricks.
Davi.
I know this is not funny, but son sound like Hulk Hogan or Stone Cold or some shit. Or Ric Flair, one of them.
The man who had groomed and abused Jessica decided to mock her by creating a reenactment of the video, with Javon Monroe playing the role of Jessica and Davi himself playing her father.
Harry Potter is you guys ruining my life, and I know I should have falling down and call me a whore for it.
Don't be saying suicide!
You guys are ruining my life.
That's what! I don't know what you say about my daughter! Don't say I'm recording this! I report you to the cyber police! And the state police! And whoever will be my daughter, you will have to deal with the police! You done goofed! You done goofed!
Nah, they fucked up.
This is her father! No good life, punks! And I know what's going from. I backtraced it! And I know what's going on, and I will contact the cyber police and the state police! If you try to beat my daughter, the consequences will never be the same again!
The next year, Jessica would be filmed giving an apology to Blood on the Dance Floor and their fans.
Hi Davi, hi Jay, hi Sally, hi the whole BTD spectrum. It's Jessica Rose, aka Jessica Slaughter here. I'm saying sorry for everything that I've done. I feel really bad about it now. I'm in foster care. I have been locked up in mental institutions, and just like you done Goose said, I do have to go to counseling now and everything, but it's not because of you. So, I'm really sorry for everything that I've done. I'm sorry for accusing you of rape and everything.
Whoa. I'm confused on why she gotta do all that and what made her make this video.
I know that all that happened, and I'm having this recorded by Oriana because I have no computer privileges now because of foster care. And why am I talking with my hands? I'm truly sorry for everything that I've done, and I love BOTDF. They're basically all the CDs that I have for BOTDF now. So just saying that I'm sorry and everything, and I love you guys to death. I mean, Jay's my idol, Davi's my idol, and Sally inspired this. I shaved it off my head. So, yeah, love you guys. Sorry.
She wouldn't be seen again until 2018, when she would finally confirm that the allegations of what Davi did to her were in fact true. Despite Davi's best efforts to convince people that the allegations against him were all lies, he quickly became far more well known as a predator than a musician. Even Jeffree Star, who these days is well known as a YouTuber, but at that time was actually a fairly popular scene artist, publicly accused Davi of being a predator on Twitter. Unfortunately, Blood on the Dance Floor's fanbase remained as vocal as ever, and continued to support the group. The band's detractors, however, began analysing the group's lyrics, and how it was obviously very suspicious that a man like Davi, who had all of these allegations against him, would have so many songs revolving around sexual themes. Davi wrote all of these songs knowing full well that his fanbase was made up mostly of underage girls. Around the same time, videos began to surface of Davi just generally being creepy and inappropriate towards his fans, while they were obviously too young and starstruck to realise what he was doing.
And we're gonna have sex. Oh, video.
Yeah, video.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Are we gonna make a porno or something?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my god. Yes. Give me your bras right now. Give me all your bras. I want them all. Give me your bras right now. I want your bras. You see this thing? Give them to me right the fuck now. Don't be a prude. Don't be a prude. Give me that Hello Kitty. Give me that Hello Kitty. I want it. Here you go.
All of this took place while Davi was promoting the band as being about love and positivity, when anyone with a functioning brain could tell that he was completely full of shit. Despite all of the negative press Davi was getting, the band continued to grow in popularity and even headlined the 2011 and 2012 Warped Tour. Many people actually attribute Davi's presence on Warped Tour to be what sparked the repeated bad press the event gets for basically being a playground for predators. During this time, Davi worked with two more women who would later accuse him of assault. Lady No Grady, who appeared on the group's biggest hit, Bewitched, alleged that Davi made several unwanted advances towards her, but because she, in her own words, stood up to him immediately, he was apparently too intimidated to go any further in his advances and instead backed down, showing that he only targets women and girls who he believes won't put up a fight. The second woman was New Year's Day vocalist Ash Costello, who alleged that Davi had attempted to strangle her on a Halloween night and tried to play it off as a joke. One of New Year's Day's merch workers, Daniel Rodriguez, also alleged that Costello had told Davi repeatedly not to touch her, but he ignored her and would continue doing so, even doing it on stage during performances. Rodriguez also claimed that he would often see underage girls getting on and off Blood on the Dance Floor's tour bus. With all of the bad press surrounding Davi, it would seem that it became too much for Javon Monroe to handle, and he left the band in 2016, and would later accuse Davi of being abusive towards him as well, saying that Davi was incredibly controlling, preventing him from contacting his family, and also withholding his HIV medication. Following his departure, the band would split up, and Davi would recruit his then fiancée, Fallon Vendetta.
Whoa. Nah, withholding his HIV medicine is crazy.
To be his new sidekick in the band, but this would last only a year, as Fallon left the band and later came out and also accused him of abuse. Chris Hansen launched an investigation into Davi in 2020 and interviewed a number of his victims. Following this, many more women came out and accused Davi of assault, with the count eventually reaching 21 women, with many of them going into detail about how cruel and violent Davi could be. Unfortunately, Davi is currently the only musician on this list who is still walking free as of this video. He doesn't seem to have changed at all, as he's reportedly still talking to underage girls online. Most of his fans from back in Blood on the Dance Floor's heyday appear to have moved on due to simply outgrowing the band, and because they've realised that the man they supported for so long was a sexual predator, who only viewed all of them as objects and toys to be used for his sick, depraved games. Davi's catchphrase back in the early 2010s was, "Haters make us famous." Of course, the hate towards the band would stop being about their music and more towards the band's predatory lead singer. Davi is still releasing music today under various different names and frequently posts on his Instagram. Mostly he posts photographs riddled with filters that change his appearance to the point that he looks almost like an alien or something. He also still wears his wigs all the time, despite the fact that he's been photographed without one, which shows that he's now completely bald. Darby has basically been a joke for the better part of a decade now, but the internet now sees him for what he really is, a cruel and manipulative monster who we can only hope that will eventually be brought to justice and sent to prison where he belongs. Anton Singleton, better known by his stage name, Big Lurch, is a former rapper who was active in the Bay Area of California between 1996 and 2002. Growing up in Dallas, Texas, Singleton displayed his skills as a writer from an early age, as he began writing poetry when he was only 7 years old. At the age of 17, after having moved to San Francisco, he decided he wanted to take his skills as a poet and transfer them over to a career as a rapper, and took the stage name Big Lurch, after the Addams family's towering butler of the same name. Being 6'7" himself, the name seemed very appropriate. In 1996, he co-founded the hip-hop group Cosmic Slop Shop alongside Marvin Dooney Baby Selman and Rick Rock, who'd previously worked as a producer on Tupac's final album, All Eyes on Me. Though the group saw minor success with the single Sinful, they released only one album, which performed poorly commercially, and the group split in 1998. On September 16, 2000, one day after his 24th birthday, Singleton was struck by a drunk driver and suffered a broken neck. He spent a long time in the hospital and was heavily medicated due to the constant pain he was in. Unfortunately, the pain continued after he returned home, and as he didn't have access to large amounts of legal pain medication, he turned to the illegal drug PCP for pain management. The drug obviously had an effect on his mind, with him developing a borderline obsession with the occult and horror films. This manifested itself in his writing, with him switching to a subgenre of hip-hop known as horrorcore, which centers around the occult, the supernatural, and psychological themes. Singleton's PCP use grew worse as time went on. He would get high and stay that way for weeks on end, sometimes neglecting to even eat. His mental state became worse, and he would become more and more delusional. This would come to a head in April of 2002. On April 10th, the Los Angeles police were called when Singleton was seen standing naked in the middle of the street, all covered in blood, staring at the sky and holding a human lung in his hand. When the police arrested him, they found that the lung he was holding had been partially eaten. The person who called the police was a friend of Singleton's, who had gone to his apartment to find a truly shocking scene. The body of Singleton's roommate, Tanisha Yasai, was laying on the ground. Her chest had been torn open, with both of her lungs removed. She had teeth marks on her face, and a 3-inch blade was embedded in her shoulder. After his arrest, the police performed a medical examination on Singleton's stomach and found human flesh that was not his own. Tanisha Yasai's boyfriend confirmed that he and Singleton had done PCP the day of the murder, which clearly caused the latter to go into a blind rage, leading to him brutally murdering Yasai and consuming her flesh. At his trial, Singleton pleaded insanity, with his defense saying that he was in a psychotic state due to his use of PCP on the night of the murder. However, the court ruled that his drug use and his claim of insanity were not satisfactory reasons for committing the murder. The district attorney concluded that drug use could not.
I was just about to ask, do he get off easily just because of that? But they basically just answered my question.
Be used for an insanity plea. The judge agreed, and Singleton was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Tanisha Yasai's mother filed a wrongful death lawsuit in 2003 against Singleton, his bodyguard, Stress Free Records, Death Row Records, and Yasai's boyfriend. The suit charged that the labels had provided Singleton with drugs to, quote, encourage him to act out in an extreme violent manner so as to make it.
Hold up, what's crazy is about them saying that his labels supply him with drugs. I heard a lot of these labels is doing that. I don't know if that's true or not, but if so, I don't know what for.
More marketable as a gangster rap artist. Part of what makes a gangster rap artist marketable is the fact that the artist is a participant in violent activities, the lawsuit claimed. Death Row protested, saying that it had no connection to Singleton and was dropped from the lawsuit. Singleton's only studio album, It's All Bad, was released in 2004, 1 year after he was sentenced. Due to the controversy surrounding him, the album only received a limited release. As such, it is now considered quite rare and has been known to go for hundreds of dollars on eBay. By far the most famous, commercially successful, and, in all honesty, most talented person on this list.
I know this might sound a little bit messed up, but regardless of this shit, I still fuck with R. Kelly. It's sad what he did, but I'm lost for words. Honestly, I still fuck with his music. I don't fuck with what he did. I fuck with his music. It's a big difference. Big difference. Well, to me it is. I know it's a difference to me.
Robert Sylvester Kelly is one of the most successful R&B singer-songwriters in history, with a career that spanned 30 years. Born in Chicago in 1967, Robert began singing in his church choir when he was 8 years old, and it was here that his gift for singing first became apparent. It was also in his 8th year where he would experience tragedy for the first time in his life, when his then-girlfriend named Lulu fell into a river and drowned. It was also around this time that he apparently became the victim of sexual abuse at the hands of an unnamed female family member, which he claims went on until he was 14 years old. He also
I think they talking about his stepsister or something like that. I want to see the whole story because I only heard little bits and pieces of it.
Claims to have been abused by a male family friend and never told anyone as he thought no one would believe him. The abuse apparently caused him to attempt to end his life when he was only 11. Things would improve for him in high school, however, as he won a talent
Hold up, male? I thought they said his stepsister. It's too much a male.
show with the performance of Stevie Wonder's Ribbon in the Sky, and was encouraged by his music teacher to give up a possible career in basketball to pursue a career in music. His career began in 1989 when he formed the New Jack Swing group MGM and released the single Why You Wanna Play Me.
They say that you don't love me. They can tell by the way you play me to the left. You wanna drive in my Mercedes and wear my gold chains round your neck. Well, I'm simply not having it.
After signing with the independent label Tab Dash Records, the group appeared on the televised talent show Big Break, which brought Kelly to national attention and also led to him winning the $100,000 grand prize. However, despite winning the contest, the group split up not long after. Kelly would then start another group called Public Announcement, and with them would release one album, Born into the 90s. While the album itself was not a big hit, failing to break the Billboard Top 40, it did produce the successful single, She's Got That Vibe. The interesting thing about this song is that most people will have only heard the single version. The full album version contains one line that was actually the first sign of what kind of person R. Kelly was behind the scenes. We'll come back to this in a bit. In 1993, Kelly released his first solo album, 12 Play, which would become a huge success for him, reaching number 2 on the Billboard Top 100 and spawning the hit single Bump and Grind, which spent 12 weeks at number 1. This album obviously made him a megastar in the US and led to many artists wanting to work with him. This included a young aspiring singer named Aaliyah Horton. The two had met in 1992 after being introduced by Aaliyah's uncle, record producer and founder of Blackground Records, Barry Hankerson. Taking Aaliyah under his wing, the two began working on her debut album, Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, in 1993. This album was basically an R. Kelly album in all but name, as he wrote all but one of the songs on it, produced the album, frequently provides guest vocals throughout, and even appears out of focus on the album cover. During the time they worked on the album, the two grew very close, and eventually developed a relationship with each other. The problem with this, of course, is that Aaliyah was 14 at the time, and Kelly knew this, as he met her when she was 12 years old, and had known about her prior to this, as she was the same Aaliyah mentioned in She's Got That Vibe, with her name being included in the song as a favor to her uncle. The media had suspected that there was secretly a romantic nature to their relationship, but each time the two were asked about it, they would always brush it off and say that they were, quote, just best friends.
Everybody seems to think that y'all are either girlfriend or boyfriend or cousins or friends. Let's just get the record straight.
I better go get me a white Jeep.
Well, no, we're not related at all. No, we're not. We're just very close. This is my best friend.
Yeah, cool.
Now, who found who? In the whole wide world.
In the December 1994 issue of Vibe magazine, a marriage certificate was published showing that Kelly and Aaliyah had gotten married in Cook County, Illinois on September 6th of that year. The certificate states that Aaliyah was 18 years old when she was actually 15 at the time. Kelly had apparently bribed someone to change her ID to say that she was 18, and this happened behind her parents' back. The marriage would be annulled in February 1995. For whatever reason, people directed.
See, like I said, I rock with the music, but not what he did.
All the blame to Aaliyah rather than the 27-year-old man who got her to marry him, believing that she had lied to him about her age. It wouldn't be until 2019, almost 20 years after Aaliyah's tragic death in a plane crash, that he would finally admit to have knowingly engaged in sexual acts with a minor. The controversy did seemingly nothing to Kelly's career. His self-titled follow-up to 12 Play made it all the way to #1 and spawned 3 #1 singles. 1996, of course, saw the release of what's probably his most iconic song, I Believe I Can Fly, from the Space Jam soundtrack. His third album, R, would hit #2 on the Top 100 and spawn the #1 hit single, I'm Your Angel, which was a duet with Celine Dion. And the year 2000 would see the release of 12 Play 2, which would be his second #1 album. All in all, it seemed like nothing could stop the Pied Piper of R&B's momentum. Yes, that's really what he called himself. In 2002, however, Kelly would find himself wrapped up in his first big controversy. A video had begun circulating that showed him engaging in obscene acts with an underage girl. While this was once again brushed off by Kelly's fans,
I didn't even know they had some of this on camera. I never heard that. I just heard the stories.
This time he would not escape so easily, and was arrested for producing CP that year. He would plead not guilty and was released on bail, before being arrested again in 2003, once again for producing CP. Just like last time, this did seemingly nothing to damage his career, as his next album, Chocolate Factory, sold over 500,000 copies in its first week and became his third #1.
Yeah, what's crazy about this is it didn't really start. I don't know what he did or sat behind closed doors or who he pissed off to make them fully help bring the cases back out. But I thought he won those cases, even though it's a little bit of evidence here and there. I thought he actually won those cases, and then it just came back. And then as y'all seen that interview that people made as a meme, that came up.
One album, and of course, he would release his magnum opus, Trapped in the Closet, in 2005.
Shit, quick, put me in the closet.
When Kelly finally went to trial over the CP charges in 2008, his victim refused to testify, leaving the jury no choice but to find him not guilty. Once again, he escaped any kind of punishment. He had apparently paid the girl's family a $2 million bribe to keep quiet and not testify against him. In 2017, Kelly would once again find himself accused of assault.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense of what happened, because I was like, didn't he get found like not guilty or something like that? But I guess probably what happened is he paid them, and after they spent up all that money, they wanted more, and he didn't give, and probably was on some I don't care type situation, and then they came back up.
When 3 sets of parents came forward and accused him of running a sex cult, which he had brainwashed their daughters into joining. Naturally, Kelly denied these accusations, and it seemed that he once again would escape any kind of punishment. It was at this point that a movement started called Mute.
Hold on. But at the same time, I feel like something should happen to the parents too, because y'all accepted the money. Y'all knew what was going on, and y'all didn't care that y'all daughter was scarred, and it was just like the money will be good compensation.
R. Kelly originally started in Atlanta, Georgia, to have one of his concerts cancelled there. The movement soon spread across the world, with its members protesting outside his recording studios and concert venues, and also calling into radio stations imploring them not to play his music. This would be the start of his downfall, and in 2019, his world would finally come crashing down when Lifetime released its Surviving R. Kelly documentary series. While the first 3 episodes discussed details the public were already aware of, the final 2 would prove to be particularly shocking, as his victims went into detail about the abuse they suffered at his hands, with most of these victims having been among those who were forced into joining his cult. All of the stories focused on the physical and mental abuse Kelly would put them through so he could control them. He finally began facing backlash as radio stations stopped playing his music, streaming services would no longer recommend his music to anyone, and he was dropped from his record labels.
Yeah, I noticed. I noticed on YouTube, if you search his name up, like damn near all his like, I don't know what happened or how they got control to do that. They damn near took all his fucking videos now. Cause I remember one time I searched up his name and like none of his videos was popping up. I thought I was tripping until I put two and two together and heard about, everything was happening. Like I didn't even know they could do all that.
Karma was finally beginning to catch up with him. After the documentary was released, Kelly gave his infamous interview with Gayle King. I'm sure you've all seen the memes from it, but this was Kelly's attempt to try and deny any of the allegations against him and get the public back on his side.
I didn't do this stuff.
This is not me, y'all.
I'm fighting for my life. Y'all killing me with this. I gave y'all 30 years of my career.
Robert.
30 years of my career. Y'all trying to kill me. You killing me, man. This is not about music. I'm trying to have a relationship with my kids, and I can't do it. Y'all just don't want to believe the truth. You don't want to believe it.
Unfortunately for him, his luck had finally run out. He would be arrested a month later and charged with 10 counts of sexual assault. Several months later, he would be arrested again, this time for racketeering and human trafficking over state lines. He would go to trial in 2021. 10 victims came forward to testify against him. Former employees would also give their testimony, as well as many government witnesses. Many pieces of damning evidence would also be used against him. The full details of his marriage to Aaliyah were finally brought to light, with him revealing
I mean, with it's kind of like with this situation, I want to say like, I don't know, like I want to say like it was planned, but then at the same time you had it coming for you when like you was paying the families off. So I don't know if this was like in the works the whole time that he was making music and just going up and all that, but it was bound to happen. It was bound to happen.
that he married her because he believed that she was pregnant, thus confirming that he had indeed engaged in acts with an underage girl. At the end of the trial, he was found guilty of racketeering, sexual exploitation of a child, bribery, sex trafficking, and violation of the Mann Act. A year later, he was found guilty of enticing a child and producing CP, and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. With this, Robert Kelly's reign of terror finally came to an end. His victims were able to stand before a court of law and speak directly to him, condemning him for all the pain and suffering he had put them through. As of this video, he's currently facing more charges in Chicago and Minnesota. Considering he's now 55 years old, it's likely that he will never leave prison alive. While he may be one of the most successful R&B artists of all time, his legacy is forever tarnished by his horrific and depraved actions, making him one of the most infamous and hated sexual predators in music.
I feel like with this, I feel like the only person they lied on was what's his name, Bill Cosby. I feel like that's the only person they lied on.
History, right up there with the likes of Gary Glitter and Ian Watkins. From now on, whenever someone hears the name R. Kelly, they will not think of the singer-songwriter Pied Piper of R&B, but the cruel and disgusting monster that he had been behind the scenes for over 30 years. He may be behind bars now, but his victims will live with the memories of his abuse for the rest of their lives. And that's the end of the video, folks. I'm really sorry this one took so damn long. This was because of a combination of me getting sick, always being really tired for some strange reason, and just generally having trouble finding some motivation to edit on some days. That being said, there's really no excuse for a video taking over 2 months to come out. I swear I'm going to try my hardest to get one more video out before the year's over, and if not, you all have my permission to kick my ass. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new.
Definitely. Shout out to him. But my opinion on all of this is, I'm definitely not giving no excuses. But for me personally, I think it starts somewhere with all these people in this video doing this. It starts somewhere. Like it either happened to them or they seen it happen. Or something, some type of mental issues, but that's no excuse. But I'm just saying it started from somewhere and then it stemmed out into them doing what they did. But thank you if you stayed to the end. Like he said, it was a long video. I appreciate y'all from the bottom of my heart. We're gonna continue growing. Follow all of my social media. The link will be in the description. Hit me up. Let me know what video you want me to react to. I'm down to do it. Y'all support me. I support y'all. And I appreciate y'all. And let's, continue to grow. Catch y'all in the next video.